Hello, everybody. This time we're going to talk about cave diving. And it's become a little bit more popular since the accident that happened in Thailand. I'm sure that you heard about it, or you watched a movie about it, you read about it. There are books. There are now a couple movies. One of them just released. I'm speaking it's September 2022. It was released last month. Directed by Ron Howard, about the boys who were trapped in a cave that got flooded in Thailand. There's also a documentary released by, I think, National Geographic earlier this year in 2022, about that, which is amazing, with real footage. Both of them are cool. One is more Hollywood, of course, the Ron Howard one, and the other one it's more a documentary. But back to cave diving, right? You see what it takes. That's sort of the extreme, of course, but cave diving was something on my list for a while, and I said, okay, how can I do it, right? I've seen the pictures, and it's just amazing. In the description that you really feel you're flying, because the water is usually crystal clear in those caves. There's no current. There's no even life forms, or very rare life forms there, because the lack of light. And then you get this crystal clear water with the effect of your light, and the fact that you have an overhead environment and on the sides as well. It's a whole different sensation, and very few people actually been there, right? So experience that with your own eyes. So I said, okay, I want to do it. How can I get it done without having to go through a cave diving certification, which again I plan on doing. I just need to find time. So here's what I did. Okay, I was, first of all, and I would say this: if you're thinking about cave diving, you need to be a very good diver. Right? It's just, do not just get your open water certification with your 4 dives, and then you say, okay, cool, I'm gonna dive in a cave now, because this is not gonna go well, probably. So you need to be very comfortable diving. You need to have advanced skills. I would recommend that at the very least. And then you need to find a very strong guide and an easy cave. All right. So those are sort of the primary requirements if you want to do it. So now, if you want to do this in the U.S., it's going to be challenging, right? There are regulations. I don't think any diving center or cave diving center will let you in just without the proper training, period. I didn't look very much in the US for it, and I'll record another episode about a place that is not a cave. There is some overhead environments in. It's called the Devil's Den in Florida, North Florida. A very cool place. I heard it's the most beautiful place by some people. Right? They said it's the most beautiful diving spot in the world. It is amazing if you look at the pictures. Really, it's a hole on the ground. I'll talk more about it in a whole episode about the Devil's Den, but it's not a cave, right? It's at most a cavern, and I'll tell you the distinction between those two in a second. But back to my point about finding where to go. The U.S. will not offer you many options. Because I think the regulations and I think the insurance liability behind cave diving will not make it feasible for any diving center in the U.S. to offer that. So that's one. Although we have, I think, one of the best cave divers in the world, or the best cave divers in the world are in the U.S., mostly in Florida. So what I did is I found a place outside the U.S. Right, I went to Dominican Republic, and there are actually a couple of very, I'll say easy, relatively speaking, of course, caves that are that they allow, and some of these dive centers will take you in with a guide, of course, and you got to prove that you have at least an advanced diving certification before they let you go, right? But there are options out there. Right. Again, Dominican Republic seemed to be a good one. I did my research and I was happy to find this place. Again, El Kiko is the name of the cave, if you look it up. An intro cave, I would say, but it's not a cavern. So here's go, right? First, the distinction between a cavern and a cave is a cavern, you can still see the light, right, coming from above. So if you have a light coming in and you can see the light, you're still in the cavern part of the cave. And that's slightly different training, right? Because you can still see the light, you can get out. Just follow the light and go up if something happens. Now, as you enter further in and you cannot see the light from outside again, that is when it's become a cave. And then you need the specifically skills, right, to be able to go in successfully and not die. So that's first the distinction. So there are some interesting caverns to dive, and it doesn't require much of an additional skill set. And cave diving is a whole different ball game. So look for that. My recommendation again is look outside the U.S., but also keep in mind that do your research about the cave itself and who you're diving with. I'm not going to recommend anybody on this podcast, but do your research. There's plenty of information out there. DR for me was a great experience with, and there are more than one operators there that offer, cave dives for people who are not cave certified. That being said, it's your own risk. This is dangerous, right? Cave diving is considered to be the most dangerous activity. I don't call it diving a sport because it's not a sport. Not in my mind. It's an activity, right? It is the most dangerous, considered, right? Most dangerous activity in the world. I don't know how it stacks up with wingsuit flying, wingsuit skydiving, which is pretty dangerous, statistically speaking. But cave diving is up there, right? So, again, do it at your own risk. I'm talking about what I did. I'm not recommending anybody to do it. I'm just saying how I did it. And if it's something that you like to do, here's some advice for you, right? I'm going to say it again. I will go through at some point a cave diving training, probably in the U.S. Very likely, because it's a long, time commitment, mostly in Florida. And I recommend everybody does it if you want to do it. It's just that if you want to do it once, the first time, right? Here are some of the options, and here are some of the things you need to think about. The other part is, because it's so dangerous, right? Try to do as much research as you can. And there is plenty of stuff on the web. There are movies about cave diving. And I think I watched them. I won't say I watched them all, because I planned for about 6 months for my cave diving. And I had had time. I think I watched everything there is, to be honest. Every YouTube video, except the minor stuff, but every movie for sure, that is out there, I watched. And there are goods and bads, right? The pros and cons. Every movie, or pretty much almost all the movies, involve some sort of accident, because I think that sells. So there's one called Dave's Not Coming Back. Amazing movie, all real stories, right? But you kind of know the ending. Dave's not coming back, right? So yeah, he doesn't, and he's trying to rescue a body of a friend who actually died. So again, be ready for not a necessarily uplifting movie if you're looking for cave diving movies. But on the positive side, you do learn a lot of the mistakes and things you need to look for, and things you need to train yourself, things you need to look for when you're talking to your guide and looking for a diving center. So that helped me understand sort of better the risks and what I should ask for. So again, look it up. There's plenty of resources out there. I spent nearly 6 months just becoming, as informed as I could, without having, of course, the proper training, as I said. The other thing to keep in mind is it's a very different kind of diving, right? I mentioned wingsuit. Wingsuit skydiving, something I wish I had the skills to do. And I don't think you can just do it once. That's a tough one, right? But if something goes wrong and you smash on a rock, well, you're dead. If you're in a cave and everything becomes dark, right? That's going to be a horrible death. So again, prepare yourself mentally, physically, and equipment. There are 5 sort of golden rules of cave diving that give you an idea what it takes, right? The first one is use a continuous guideline, right? That will point you always to the surface. And it typically begins at the entrance of the cave, not the cavern, right? To avoid, less skilled or open water divers to actually find the line and say, oh, what is this line here? I'm going to go and I'm going to see where it takes me, right? And then all of a sudden they're in a cave. So always use that guideline. That's your lifeline. Save 2/3 of the total oxygen, air supply that you have. Not necessarily oxygen, but air supply. So it's the rule of the third, right? You use 1/3 to go in, and then you turn back and you go out. And you use, ideally, typically depending on the current, right? You're going to use the same 1/3, give it or take, again, if the current is helping you or not, to get out. And you still have 1/3 of the air left for emergencies. So that's very important. I'm actually using more of this rule when I'm diving even open water. So that's a good rule. You carry always 3 lights, right? One you're using, the other one is your backup, and the other one is the backup of the backup. And then you have a buddy who also has 3 lights. So the chances that all 6 lights fail are very small. And it's just trying to minimize the risk. Because if everything goes dark, finding that guideline to lead you out of the cave, it's the only way out, pretty much. You're going to limit the depth, right, to the gas that you have. And in the cave, my experience was kind of interesting, you lose perception if you're going up or down. I was not watching my computer as much as I should, perhaps, because I was paying attention not to hit anything, and my buoyancy is pretty good, so I was controlling it well. But again, I was distracted by the beauty of the cave itself, to be honest. My ears were telling me, you're going down, right? Because the pressure was increasing. So, but I could not even see it, and I didn't notice until I then felt it in my ears, right? The pressure increase. You do not really know exactly if you're going up or down because, again, you are in a closed space, right? So the cave may be going deeper and you're not even realizing it. And I'll tell you a little bit more about it after I finish the 5th rule, which is be well trained in cave diving and prepare for the dive, right? In that case, it was just an intro dive that I did. Actually, I did a couple, to be honest, in a couple caves. To be perfectly honest, I did well in the first one and I went to another one with the same guide, same day, because the depth allowed us to do it. It was not very deep. It was very the length. It was about 3,000 feet in length. So we had the fun, and but it was not very deep, so we could do it twice in a short period of time. So keep those 5 rules in mind. I think they tell you a little bit about why it's so important. There are many, many, many other rules, and pertains to the equipment and how you even are diving, right? You're going to use frog kicks not to get any silt up, or you get in a silt out situation. Even with the lights, you cannot see anything, right? So in how you dive it, the way you control your buoyancy, etc., is super important. Last piece is, again, full transparency. In one of my dives, I actually blew one of my eardrums, the second one, because I was going down. I could not signal, and there are some signals you learn, right, to do with your light, with your torch. Remember, you cannot, you're underwater, right? So that was the only way, and everything is super dark, absolute dark. Right? There's no photon of light that goes through the cave. Think about it. It's kind of interesting. And my eardrum, was, I could not equalize, and I couldn't equalize. It was my second dive, and I signaled to my guide, and he didn't see it. And at some point, we could not even turn because it was a very tight part of the cave. So I had to make a decision at the time, like either, what do I do, right? The pain was excruciating on my left ear, and I just blew it really hard trying to equalize, and it ruptured, right, the eardrum. Which is interesting. You get immediate relief when the water comes in, cold water, but you get extremely dizzy. And that was not a pleasant end of a second dive when we kind of surfaced in an air pocket. That was the turning point, coincidentally. And he looked at me and said, look, I'm super dizzy. I think I ruptured my eardrum, and I forced too hard. And he's like, okay, now we have to go back, right? And you go in front, by the way, because he's gonna recover that line, that the extra line that he was laying. So, you have to be mentally calm and prepared and strong to be able to, under those circumstances, kind of say, I'll go in front. It was just my second cave dive. I'm dizzy. And we'll get out of here. There was not much of an option, right? What are you going to do? So you cannot go up. So think about that. You'd be mentally prepared. Are you calm enough diving to be able to go through something if something goes wrong? So, that happened. We got out. Everything's good. My eardrum healed. Didn't need surgery. So it's all good. I just could not dive for 3 months. But other than that, definitely worth it. Super experience. You're in another world, right? I think there are more people who actually went to the moon than went to some of, the caves, the submerged caves in certain parts of the world, right? So it's a very small community. You get people like Jill Heinerth. She has a great book, by the way. Becky Kagan, Mark Long. There are a few more, but it's a very small group of fully certified cave divers out there. And you see in the movie, right? If I'll wrap it up, this podcast, going back to the movie 13 Lives, you see who they are. They're again, small. They all know each other, globally speaking. It's something I want to be more part of, but I need the training. So I need just to find time and the logistics to go to Florida and do this. But this is definitely on the list, to get the former trainer from one of these guys. And then be able to go to other caves and explore other caves that I definitely won't be able to, and I won't go without the former training. So that's all I had to talk about cave diving. I, again, recommend you guys do it. Just be super careful. Find the right guide. Find an easy cave, of course. Nobody's going to take you to a hard cave, but, there are crazy people out there. And do your research more so than you would for any other activity, I say, because it is the most dangerous one out there. But it is amazing. It's an amazing experience. More about diving in the next episode. I'm going to talk about the cavern diving, much more attainable and in Florida. That's the Devil's Den. In spite the name, it's awesome. Talk to you later. Bye.